It's a sweet finish for the Mumbai Indians. Scott Sharma bowled Tendulkar as Arjun holds his nerve. We have seen 20-run overs not necessarily go the bowler's way, but we have seen the Mumbai Indians registered an impressive third win on the trot, and they join the pack of teams now that have played 5 and won 3. Sunrisers would look back at this game and felt like at home they were favourites. That's certainly how Tom Moody phrased it at the start of our show. Matt Roller is here as well on ESPNcricinfo T20 Time. As we look back at the game and where that chase went wrong for the Sunrisers. You did call it, Tom, at halftime. You felt like Mumbai had enough, and they just about did, in spite of the challenges with their bowling, which in fairness, they had some good things to look forward to in this. How do you sum up that Sunrisers chase?
Yeah, look, early wickets were an issue. Obviously, Brooke and Tripathi are 2 big wickets, and losing them early puts enormous pressure on an out-of-form Agarwal. Even though that he found his way to 48 or 41 deliveries, there wasn't enough, I suppose, fire in his innings to keep the momentum going regardless of those early wickets. And it nearly felt like they were forever chasing the game from that point. So from the power play onwards, I think they were 42 after the first 6 overs. When you're chasing a total as big as what they were chasing, you need to be a little bit further down the road than that, and particularly with 2 dynamic players in the dugout.
If we know Mumbai's bowling has holes, and we keep analysing it to death, but if you had to hope about this bowling coming together, you would hope Behrendorff gets early wickets. You would hope Arjun Tendulkar bowls 2 quiet overs with the new ball. You'd hope Piyush Chawla gets breakthroughs in the middle, and hope Riley Meredith finishes the innings all right. And everything they could hope for seemed to have worked today. So suddenly, it's not a bad bowling, is it?
Yeah, and you'd also hope that Cam Green would be as effective as he was, because I think he ended with 1 for 29 from 4 overs. And while that wicket wasn't necessarily the perfect ball that he, the best ball that he bowled on the night, I think he was pretty effective through that middle phase. Just as Sunrisers were looking to rebuild and looking to inject some life into that innings in the chase, and this felt just quietly like a night where Cam Green sort of really arrived at the IPL, actually, having obviously been signed for such a big price tag, slightly different roles in his first few games, but he, obviously top scored with the batting at number 3, recovered from that slow start and really took them towards that 190 plus total that you felt they probably needed, given the conditions, given the ground, and given what we've seen across the season so far. And then to deliver as he did with the ball, I think Mumbai will be pretty happy looking at Green's performance tonight. Yeah,
you think that's the biggest takeaway? Last time the big takeaway was guys like Surya and Kishan getting runs. Today's big takeaway from Mumbai is Cam Green arriving?
A massive tick for Mumbai and also Cameron Green to bowl 4 reliable overs, which we know he's got the capability of doing, even though he's still very much in the early stages of his career, and to bat with the maturity he did at the top of the order is a big win. That's a genuine all-rounders performance. That's a proper all-rounders performance where you take control of the batting and you take responsibility with the bat in hand, and then you get the ball and you hold down some key moments with the ball and bowl some really important overs and pick up a wicket along the way.
There were key periods in that game where you still felt it could go Sunrisers' way in spite of the start that Jason Behrendorff gave the Mumbai Indians. So we have to speak of the matchup between Piyush Chawla and Heinrich Klaasen, because Klaasen's a dangerous player, Tom. And at that point, it looked like he had Piyush Chawla, perhaps their best bowler this season, under the pump. Take me through that over.
Well, he's not the first person to be at the end of a Klaasen sort of masterclass, because he's growing in stature and reputation around how he can just tear spin apart. And tonight was a great example. That one over, you just always felt that he was going to hit it for every ball for a boundary, because he's got so many options, whether he's hitting you straight down the ground for 6 or he's playing that reverse switch hit for 6 or 4 or just conventional. He's such a dangerous player. And off the bat initially, the one he got out to, I thought he's nailed that one as well for 6. But yeah, look, that's just a taste of what's to come. There's got to be a few spinners a little bit nervous in this tournament to come when he comes to the crease, because he clearly has got an A-grade game when it comes to spin. Yeah,
in fairness though, Mumbai would be happy. They have a veteran wrist spinner. We're wondering if the move to go back to Chawla and not ahead perhaps to a spinner, someone like Markande, who they've had and released, would pay off. And 4 or 5 games in, it seems like they've done right.
Yeah, probably not Chawla's best night, I would say, given the way that last over panned out. But it was just interesting what Tom was saying there with Klaassen taking him down and sort of going for his last ball, because my impression is that maybe 10 years ago, the coach responding to that when you've already taken him for 20 off and over, holes out to the boundary rider off the last ball of the wrist spinner spell, might get an earful. But I think now you would probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, you would probably just talk about the execution of the shot, not the intent, because if they got 27 off that over, they'd be well ahead in the game.
Well, I'm sort of sitting here and talking about Klaassen as a fan, not with my coach's hat on. But now you bring that up, that'd be definitely a conversation that you would talk to him about. In that, look, because that was a critical over. That sort of switched the momentum back towards Sunrisers, and it was probably one too many sort of. Strikes of luck, I suppose, or, strike of adventure with his stroke play. Bank what you've done and just move forward to the next over. Yeah. Maybe the conversation. In
fairness, though, it didn't look like the ball that he would want to work around. I think it was short. He perhaps
Well, it wasn't that short. If it was shorter, he would have probably pulled it because it was just short of a length, back of a length type delivery. He had to sort of play a straighter bat pull shot. Which players can do, very well these days. Yeah. It's not a shot we saw 10 years ago, but it's a shot we see regularly now.
This is also, I guess, the game that Jason Behrendorff was bought for, just to give them 2 wickets, and that to perhaps the 2 key batters in the opposition with the new ball. That sets it up. If Sunrisers get off to a start, Harry Brook gets off to a start, maybe they're chasing this. So Behrendorff as well, a tick box?
Yeah, did really well, I think. Obviously, pretty expensive at the death when he came back, but the role he's been brought in to perform is to take new ball wickets, and he managed that tonight, and that's exactly what they're after from him in this team. As long as, while Jofra Archer's unavailable, he's coming in as the sort of backup seamer, I suppose, and has done pretty well, I think, so far. Yeah,
in the absence of Archer, and that's not something they would have hoped for with Bumrah gone as well, but now that's, 4 games without him, and now between Behrendorff and Meredith, we have to credit Meredith here as well. He went for a few in his first 2, but he seemed to nail those Yorkers in the last 2. Have they found a way with the overseas options they have, highly limited overseas options that they have?
Yeah, look, and again, I wouldn't say they're limited either, because Behrendorff historically is the best power play bowler over the last 10 years in T20 cricket. He does exactly what he did tonight. He takes wickets with a new ball, and to have assets like that in your team are just worth their weight in gold. Meredith has had a taste of IPL cricket before, hasn't quite sort of got his hands around those opportunities, but tonight you have to take your hat off to him. He came in specifically to bowl the tough overs. They're all defensive overs he's having to bowl, and he nailed his Yorker, and his return at 2 for 33 is a very good return. So I think they have got 2 bowlers that provide them with the service that's required, someone up front, someone in the middle and the end, and they just need the other pieces to fall into place for them. And when Archer becomes available, it'll be interesting to see which one they move aside out of those 2, because Jofra plays a role, both those roles. He's an impact bowler in the power play, but he's also a very good defensive bowler.
The Sunrisers, how would they be looking back at this game? Would they go to the first innings and say we shouldn't have let them get 190 plus, or would they say that there's still something which doesn't seem right about their batting? Yes, their batting has won them games. Harry Brooks won a Player of the Match award. Tripathi's got a quick fire 75. Markram looks in great form. Klaassen's playing well. And yet, is it fair to say there's something still missing about their batting?
I think they'll look back on the performance and think that their bowling wasn't quite as polished as it should have been. Obviously Natarajan, without singling out any individual, but he's not quite on yet. He hasn't really been on this tournament. It was puzzling, and we talked about this when they made the selection at the toss. No Umar Malik. That was puzzling, because to have a bowler, an impact bowler like him, sitting out of a game when you have the flexibility of an impact sub, it didn't seem to make a lot of sense, particularly at a big venue like Hyderabad. And their batting, unfortunately, starts aren't good enough. When you're chasing a total of 190 plus, you need someone in your top order. Once they're in, they need to score a 70, 80 plus. to chase that down. You can't just have these small little contributions just hoping that you're going to get over the line.
They have perhaps surprised us more than other teams. Normally Rajasthan are the team reserved to making surprising calls that we discuss on our show, but Harry Brook at the top seems like he's going to be there, and when that move doesn't work, there's always going to be an eye on Harry Brook as well as Abhishek Sharma, who in the middle play a tough role, especially in a chase, Umran's exclusion. I'm sure there's something for our friend at the Sunrisers dugout to perhaps consider.
Yeah, I'm sure Gaurav Sundararaman is working hard. We've seen him.
He's probably watching this right now. I'm sure he does. So
we've seen him chewing Brian Lara's ear off. So, but I think, to be honest, I think Mayank's innings, much as he ended up with 48, I think given the balls that he took, I think will be a bit of a concern, because they've obviously identified him at the auction as someone that they can, be a sort of senior batter in that team. I guess there's a fair few young players through that batting lineup, or youngish players. And Mayank, I think he's 32 now, should be the person that's sort of taking responsibility in chases like this to get them off to a good start. And also, once he's got in, once he's used up those balls, they've really needed him to stay just long enough to at least, if not to the end, then to have accelerated and taken the required rate a little further down than he really managed to. Because those innings can really cost you in a game like this when you're chasing 190 plus to get 48 or 41. It's clearly they lost early wickets. It's easier to, it's not always the easiest situation, but still, I think they'll look back with a bit of disappointment at that innings.
Given what this result does to both teams, what's the feeling you're getting or impression you're getting with both these two teams? Is it, Mumbai have now won 3, and that makes them dangerous now that they're batting, more and more pieces of their batting seem to be firing, and the bowling then, when you're winning, suddenly things happen for you. And Sunrisers, on the other hand, would they just look at this and say, okay, we missed out, but still enough going good for us, or are you more concerned about the Sunrisers? What are your impressions after the 5-game mark's been hit for both these teams?
I think Mumbai will be very pleased with the outcome on the win column. I think they're punching above their weight at the moment with regards to wins against losses, because they've faced a little bit more adversity with a couple of things not going their way, with injuries and what have you. I think the Sunrisers will feel extremely disappointed that they're in the position they're in, only having won 2 games and having lost 2 games at home. And I still feel there is confusion around what the 11 is. What is the role clarity? What is the best 11? How does that 11 stack up? We've seen one genius knock from Brook at the top of the order, but is that still the answer? Should he be at the top of the order? Should Abhishek Sharma be floating in no man's land in the middle order where he's never batted before? To me, there's more conversations and uncertainty around what's happening there with regards to their batting lineup, even though it's got nearly an embarrassment of riches, and also what their best combination is with their bowlers.
Impressions?
Yeah, I would echo pretty much everything Tom said there. I think, especially if you think about Mumbai and the amount that they invested in those 2 premium fast bowlers in Jofra Archer and Jasprit Bumrah, to have had them available for a combined 1 game this season, to have lost that game and to have come through with 3 wins from 5, I think they'll be pretty pleased. But to be honest, I think what we've seen so far is there's a lot of evenly matched teams, or relatively evenly matched teams in this league, because if you look at how the table is shaping up, it's obviously early days, but we've got Delhi adrift at the bottom, and then a lot of teams very bunched at this stage of the season. Obviously, we might see some patterns emerge, we might see a chasing pack or whatever, but it feels like there's a lot of teams that will take a lot of points off each other, and you never know, maybe you can even get through with 7 wins this year.
We're going to start having Thursday doubleheaders now, so very quickly the tournament will move on. Mumbai will go back to the Wankhede and await Punjab Kings. Sunrisers have a tough one at the Chepauk on Friday, and then they've got 2 back-to-back games against Delhi. So lots can happen in the next week or so. Before we wrap things up, let's get a quick word in on that last over, because I'm sure there'll be a conversation, an element of curiosity. Arjun Tendulkar bowled just the 2 overs of the Wankhede, bowled 2 relatively quiet overs for 14 with the new ball, and then had to bowl that over. I know he bowled to Markande at the end, but that's not the worst last over we've seen this IPL, has it?
Yeah, look, given if you're assessing it purely on execution, he got it right. He got his line right. He bowled to the side of the field that he was looking to bowl. He got the length right. He got a number of those deliveries, close to the Yorker. It would have put him under enormous pressure, and it would have put Rohit Sharma under enormous pressure, because he wouldn't have been planning at the beginning of that innings that that Arjun Tendulkar was going to be one of his death bowlers. He's clearly got a role in that side, and that is to bowl with that new ball, which he has done well twice now. You've got to give him credit for that. He's done that very well twice, and I see his role potentially as an over in the middle somewhere if the timing's right, but certainly not as a specialist death bowler. But he can walk away from that performance holding his head up high because he took it on. Yeah, he had the tail to bowl to and he had 20 runs, but we've seen that go pear-shaped as well. So, he's done well.
Yeah, and that's the slot that was in the first few games occupied by Arshad Khan, who clearly struggled. Perhaps it's the timing, perhaps it's in when he's been in a team which happens to be firing, but it looks like that's a slot he'll keep for a while now. Yeah,
I thought Rohit Sharma did well tonight. Just in that last over, I think there's always a temptation when you have a sort of one missing over to try and slot it in earlier and risk that big over, but he held him back to the end, trusted in his main bowlers to leave a big total to defend, and obviously bowling at the tail, as Moose said as well, and obviously stuck to a pretty simple plan, but one that's easy, pretty tricky to execute, those wide Yorkers. And while they maybe not 100% spot on every ball, you could see what he was trying to do. The field was set accordingly and closed out what ended up being a more comfortable win than we might have imagined after 14 overs or so.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've got a Tendulkar on the scorecard now properly, as he'll remember that wicket of Mayank Markandeya as his first in the IPL. And before we wrap up, let's get a review on captaincy and where the game turned. Review of both captains, Tom Moody, Markram and Rohit. Matt says good things about Rohit's use of his bowlers. Yeah,
I'd agree with that. I thought Rohit it's a difficult situation when you're in a position where you're not overwhelmed with options and a variety of options to juggle with your specialist bowlers. So I thought Rohit did a good job, and there's no surprise there. He's one of the leading captains in this format of the game. Look, I don't think Markram did a lot wrong, really. He led from the front of the field. He took some unbelievable catches. He sets a standard. I like his body language, tactically, on the field. Once he was presented with his 11, did what he could. Whether he had the right 11 out there, we've already pointed out, is questionable. But, I thought they both had good days.
And where the game turned for you? Was a decisive period of play. Was it the early wickets by Behrendorff, Heinrich Klaassen, or maybe in the first innings?
I'm gonna put it the Klaassen wicket was the turning point. If he stayed in, if that was a dot ball or went for one, Sunrisers won that game.
Matt?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think personally, I don't think we can be too critical of Klaassen taking it on. I think he lined him up. I think he really felt as though he could have broken the back of that chase if he cleared that man on the rope, and just didn't quite work for him. But I reckon in the same scenario he'd have done the same thing, but just try and hit it 10 metres further back.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Matt Roller, Tom Moody. Always a pleasure getting your thoughts on ESPNcricinfo T20 Time. On happy days for the Mumbai Indians, certainly happier than they've had and seen for a while, given how last year's IPL went out and how this year's tournament started. Questions for the Sunrisers. We've got a tough one at the Chepauk in a few days' time. It's a big one tomorrow. One plays too. Rajasthan Royals and the Lucknow Super Giants. So we look forward to your company then on ESPNcricinfo T20 Time. I'd go have a look at that points table. You'll find it on the ESPNcricinfo mobile app. Get it on the App Store, Play Store. It's a good time to start looking at how many teams are in what's already looking like a bit of a dogfight for positions, and keep an eye out on net run rate. It could be more valuable this year than any other. It always is important, but even more so this year. We'll see you tomorrow for build-up for RR versus LSG. Good night.